Welcome! Thanks for joining me for the Mastering Multiplication Facts webinar Take 2. I'm Laura Candler, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to share some effective strategies for ensuring that all of your students learn their times tables fluently this year. I taught grades 4 through 6 for almost 30 years, and now I'm an author, teacher blogger, and an educational consultant. You might know me from my teaching resources website, my blog, my Pinterest boards, or my Facebook page. If so, you'll know that I love sharing resources with teachers and collaborating with others. And that's one reason I enjoy doing the webinars, because it is a collaboration where people are able to share their ideas in the chat area as we go along. The webinar is called Take 2 because it's an updated version of a webinar that I did a few years ago. Now that Common Core is in full force in most states, I felt the need to share some additional strategies that were not included in my original presentation. Also, I learned quite a bit the first time I did the presentation from teachers who attended and from teachers who have tested some of the strategies and given me some feedback. And they just had some terrific ideas that I wanted to incorporate in another webinar. I've always been a big believer in making sure that kids know their times tables, and over the years I put together what was a very effective program for me, and I ended up calling it the Mastering Math Facts System. A few years ago, I wrote a full-length ebook called Mastering Math Facts to describe the system and serve as a complete resource. Just this past year, actually just a few months ago, I finished up a wonderful project with the help of the terrific team at Compass Publishing. I recently revised that book, aligned it with the Common Core, and it's now available in print. Now, I know as I'm saying that, some of you are thinking, I knew she was going to try to sell us something. Well, let me just put your mind at ease. If you stick with me for the next hour or so, I'm going to explain the entire Mastering Math Facts system in a step-by-step manner. I really sincerely want to share with you these strategies. Yes, all of the information is in the book, so it would be impossible for me to present this session without referring to it from time to time. But I promise you that the webinar is not about promoting the book. The most important thing I'm promoting today is the need to do whatever it takes to make sure your kids know their times tables fluently. And I'll be offering loads of free resources on my website on this topic, as well as a 43-page sample of activities from the book that you can actually print and use. So just kind of wanted to get that out of the way before we get started. So why should kids memorize their math facts? Some people would argue that it's not necessary because we have calculators, and as long as kids understand how to figure them out on their own, it's just archaic to make them memorize their math facts. But if you ask any teacher, you'll know that it's really, really important for kids to understand their math facts and know them fluently, because if they don't know their math facts by 4th grade, they're really going to continue to struggle until they learn them. We're going to dig into that in just a few minutes. What does the research say about this? Aside from the Common Core, the Foundations for Success was a report from the National Mathematics Advisory Panel that came out in 2008. And it said, for all content areas, practice allows students to achieve automaticity of basic skills, the fast, accurate, and effortless process of content information, which frees up working memory for more complex aspects of problem solving. And I really believe that that's important, because computational fluency is just like fluency with words. If you had to sound out every word in a book, you'd never experience the joy of reading a great book. If you had to count times tables on your fingers every time you did a problem, or scribble on a piece of paper to try to use some kind of method to figure them out, all your brain power would be going into figuring out something that you could have easily memorized. You'd have nothing left for the hard stuff. And as a teacher, I really found this to be true in the classroom. Kids could be really smart, but if they didn't know their times tables, they would struggle, especially in 5th grade. I spent most of my years in 5th grade and also in 4th grade. And if they didn't know those times tables, they really struggled, and it took up a lot of mental power that could have been devoted to something else. And I think this is really true with the Common Core. When you start looking at those standards for 4th and 5th grade especially, they are so deep and so intense that these kids have got to know these math facts fluently before you can even get into some of those deeper levels. So let's take a quick look at how the Common Core, how MathFact Fluency fits into the Common Core standards. It actually starts back in 2nd grade with working with equal groups of objects to gain the foundations for multiplication. This is this snapshot, these screenshots that I have here are from one of the original documents, and I know that the Common Core standards now have very specific numbering systems and so on, but I chose to keep this version of it because I want to stay at a pretty high level here, and as we get into the webinar more, I'll give you some specific standards. In 3rd grade, it specifically says that they need to multiply and divide within 100. And when you break that out in more detail, it says, fluently multiply and divide within 100 using strategies such as the relationship between multiplication and division. And then by the end of 3rd grade, know from memory all products of two one-digit numbers. So, I mean, it's clearly stated in 3rd grade. Well, you might be a 4th or 5th grade teacher thinking, okay, that's a 3rd grade skill. They should know that when they come to me. You know, that's not my job to teach it. But I think, you know, with the Common Core, you're responsible for not only teaching what's in your grade level, but making sure that the students can have mastered everything in the previous grade levels up to you. So it is something that you'll need to dig back into and take care of. In 4th grade, the standards dealing with gaining familiarity with factors and multiples directly relate to fluency, because if the kids aren't fluent with their math facts, it's going to be really hard for them to find factors and multiples. And then also with division, introducing division, it's just about impossible to divide if you don't know your math facts. And then 5th grade, performing operations with multi-digit whole numbers with decimals to hundredths, and using fractions, all of those skills, you know, that you've got to have that foundation of fluency. So let's take a look at your classroom right now. And Francie, don't give them the whiteboard permissions till I finish explaining this, but this is a little interactive activity to find out about your classroom. What you're going to do in just a minute is I'm going to describe these 3 bowls of ice cream in terms of what they mean for math fact mastery in your classroom, and you're going to use a whiteboard tool like the Starburst and just put a little starburst in the area under the description that fits you. So the bowl that has just one little old scoop of ice cream and a piece of a banana showing is represents if your students last year, thinking about your students last year, hardly any of them knew their math facts fluently at the end of the year. They, you know, very few did. The middle one would be, you know, maybe half the kids knew their math facts fluently, but there were quite a few kids that really didn't know them. And then the ice cream sundae illustration represents you had a very large number, maybe even 95 to 100% of your students mastered them and they knew them fluently. Okay, Francie, give them the whiteboard permissions and let's let them use their Starburst tool and just put a click. Nobody's going to know who's clicking where, so as soon as we get those permissions to you, just grab your, double click on your Starburst tool. They're not showing up here. Francie? Looks good. I don't see any responses, so I'm thinking they don't have their tools yet.
Well, I cleared it.
Okay, we need to give them the permission. Peggy, can you take over for that piece real quick?
How about that? How about now? Everybody try it now.
They have the tools now, right?
Okay. Now we got it. Okay.
So,
everybody
just
try
clicking.
somewhere. Just double click on your Starburst tool and then click under the bowl that represents. Yeah. I can only see mine too. Is there anybody else clicking? This is strange. Peggy? That's kind of weird. Everybody can only see their own tool. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Well, it's very strange because it's not behaving well. That's not what it's supposed to do. We could try having them use the clip art tool and see if that would work. There's something that's not working right.
Yeah, something
which is
buggy about this.
If you click on the very last box at the bottom of that web tool window, you see something that says clip art, and it should open up a little bar. And if you click on common symbols, all of those are available to you. So you can take the green check, the red X, the star, the exclamation point, the smiley face. You can pick any one of those and double click on it and then drag it to below the ice cream sundaes.
Okay,
that
it's magically working now. Yay, I see a bunch of smiley faces. I love the smiley faces because I was feeling pretty sad about the fact that it wasn't working.
The joys of technology, you know.
I know. It wouldn't be a great webinar without some kind of a little glitch in there, right? Okay. All right, so it looks like the large majority of people are right in the center. We do have a bunch of folks who feel like they've been successful with getting their kids to master their times tables. So I'm hoping that those people will be helping to share some strategies in the chat area about that. And we've got that large bunch in the middle that they've got some good things going on, but they probably want some more strategies to ensure that all of their kids know them. And then there's quite a few who obviously are experiencing a lot of frustration about their students not learning their times tables. So anyways, before we move on to the next slide, I guess this would be a good time just to address, you wonder as a teacher, why don't the kids know their times tables? I mean, it's just a matter of memorizing their times tables. I learned them as a kid. Why can't these kids learn them? And I think there's a lot of things that go on, but one thing I've noticed about kids today is they're very into immediate gratification. And it takes time and persistence and commitment to learn your times tables. And I've seen kids who are really smart who get very discouraged and they think they can't learn their times tables. And that's because they're not willing to put in the time that it takes. It's not just the understanding. They may already have the understanding, but they do have to be willing to do some of that practice and games and different things like that. And so the thing is, we can't let them make that decision. That decision is too important for the rest of their lives. So we kind of have to bring in some strategies ourselves. Okay, let's remove the web tool permissions before I go to the next screen, and so that we can stop playing around. Playing around is fun, but we need to get on to the meat of the session. So let me explain to you about the Mastering Math Facts system that has worked really well for me. There are 6 steps here in my revised book. I actually developed it out to more steps, but I'm going to keep it kind of simple and high level here. The first thing we need to do is teach for conceptual understanding, or make sure that the students really do understand what's going on. And I'm going to be developing all these out later, but I'm just going to give you a quick run through. The next thing is to relate those facts to real-life problem solving. The third step is to provide lots of opportunities to develop fluency, like games, websites, partner activities. This is really key, this fourth step, and I'll be talking about this in quite a bit of detail later. Set a goal of 100% accuracy for all students, that all students will learn their times tables this year. Assess regularly and track progress. And then the last key element is to plan some kind of a celebration when all students know those math facts fluently. Now let's break this down and see what each step involves. Before we get to that, I wanted to mention something. I told you earlier that I was going to give you a link to a free sample. I think Francie had put that in the chat area. You don't really need it right now. You can get it later. But it does have, she asked me, how come it doesn't have the word sample on every page? And I said, because it's not a preview, it's a sample. The word sample is on the cover, but the rest of the pages are just regular pages right out of the book. And I will be going through some of the activities, so I wanted you to know you would have those. And also you see the little book icon. I want to see if I can use my hand pointer right here. And when you see that little icon next to something, it means it's in the sampler. Okay, the first thing in teaching for understanding is to really make sure that the students have a deep understanding of multiplication as it relates to addition. So start with what your students already know and introduce multiplication as repeated addition, using skip counting and so on. For example, you could use a simple activity like this egg cartons and beans activity and model 4 times 2 with 4 groups of 2 beans in each group. Use activities like this so that students are actually seeing and developing that conceptual understanding. If you notice in the little purple rounded oval box there, it has the specific Common Core state standard that this activity refers to. This fishbowl multiplication activity is a little more detailed activity, and it is in the sample. The whole thing's in the sample. And I want to tell you how this one works, because this is a neat activity to help develop that connection between addition and multiplication. So each students work with a partner, and they have a game board in front of them like this. And there are these cards that can be cut apart, or students can just write on the game board if it's laminated, but I usually use the cards. They have addition sentences and multiplication sentences. And what happens is the first person puts down a multiplication sentence, an addition sentence in the box at the bottom of the page, and then their partner takes fish or little dried beans or whatever, paper clips or whatever you want to use for the manipulative, and actually models that on the game board. Then the person who modeled it looks for the, let me use my right here, looks for the related multiplication sentence and puts it in the box at the bottom, and then both of them count to find out what the total number of fish is. And then for the next time they switch. Now this is a teacher-guided activity, and it's a way of introducing multiplication so that students are getting the concept and making that connection. And then it could be used in a center later. Another hands-on activity, and I remember doing this with my own children when they were young, is using simple things like Fruit Loops to explain the difference between addition and multiplication. And even in 5th grade, I would get kids to draw on their whiteboards, what does it mean if I say 4 plus 3? And I would have them just use circles or something and show me what does that mean. And then I would say, what does it mean to say 4 times 3, and see if they knew the difference, because some 5th graders really didn't even grasp the concept of visually what the difference is, and that's a key thing. So it's important to make sure that your students have this foundation. Another thing to do is to use arrays, linking cubes, graph paper, and things like that for introducing these concepts. I found a neat thing on the MathCats website, and if Francie can find the link to that and put it in the chat, and like I said, I'm not following the chat, but it's a neat little Java-based program where you can click on the one number here, then another number, and then you click on the equal sign and this box pops up. And then if you look down here at the bottom, it shows kind of like a skip counting method of finding the answer. And it's just like on the multiplication table, they would find 35 right there. So it's a way of relating the multiplication table to arrays and that kind of thing, so that the kids can see the connection and where it came from. Step 2 in that process is to relate those multiplication facts or even addition facts to real-life problems. And it's best to go from concrete objects to paper and pencil drawings, and then the symbolic representations. You can use everyday objects in situations like 3 children have 2 cookies each. How many cookies in all? Actually start out modeling it with students and giving them cookies. If you don't want to use food in the classroom, you could use some type of manipulative, paper cookies to represent it or whatever. Then have them draw a sketch, and then the last step would be adding the symbolic representation of 3 times 2 equals 6. So it's helping to make those connections. There's an activity in the Mastering Math Facts book called Picture This, Multiplication. It's just a simple page with a word problem on it, and the kids have to draw out their response, and then at the bottom of the page put the addition sentence, the multiplication sentence, and then give the product, but it helps them make those connections. I wanted to stop and do a quick check-in on Common Core state standards. all of the activities that I've talked about actually hit on the mathematical practice standards. Not all of them. There are 8 mathematical practice standards. A lot of times they get overlooked in the content standards, but the steps 1 and 2 of the process really touch on these things like making sense of problems and persevere in solving them, model with mathematics, use appropriate tools strategically, attend to precision, which actually refers to mathematical communication, like using the terms like factor and product and those types of things, and looking for and making use of structure, as in the times table activity. Now, 3rd grade teachers might be going, yeah, this is what we need. 4th grade and 5th grade teachers might be thinking, whoa, this is like way too much. They're supposed to have already learned this. I totally understand that, and the materials that I'm presenting are for a large span. For 4th and 5th grade teachers, they would not be expected to do all of these things with linking cubes and graph paper and all of those things. They would only do those in maybe small group settings with kids that never got that background. So this is sort of a mix and match, pick what you need from this conceptual piece. Certainly as a 5th grade teacher, I covered all of these basic little things here in like 15 minutes, just with the kids drawing pictures on whiteboards and things to make sure that they all were up to speed on it. But if the kids do not understand those basic strategies, basic foundation of multiplication, it's really important that they get that piece. The next thing is to provide lots of opportunities to build fluency, and some of the best ways are flashcards. They're tried and true. They may not be the most fun thing, but they are effective. Teach kids how to practice alone or with a partner. There are lots of great multiplication websites and apps, and I'll be telling you about some of those in just a minute, and some multiplication center games, and I'll show those to you in just a minute too. So these are some things that you can have them do. One thing down at the bottom of the page here, I've got this little tip. It says pair students of similar abilities. When kids are studying their times tables and practicing fluency, it's really not fair to put that student who can do 100 problems in a minute with the kid that can only do 15 problems in a minute. Is very discouraging. So one thing that I did to find my partners is I gave my students like a pre-test and took down their scores of like how many of the problems on the worksheet they could finish in, say, 10 minutes. And then when they were practicing, I tried to keep kids together that had similar abilities, because they would challenge each other, but they wouldn't get frustrated. So this is such a simple game, and probably a lot of you already know it, but I'm going to go through it real quickly anyways because it's so easy. I want to just quickly teach you how to play multiplication war with your students. And if you have kids at home that don't know their times tables, this is great too. One of my daughters didn't really know her times tables well when she got in 6th grade, and so we just played multiplication war after dinner, just for fun, to try to get her up to speed on some of that. So with multiplication war, you remove your face cards and your jokers. 2 players split the deck between them, and then the traditional rules apply. So what you do is you, as you're facing each other, you put down 3 cards, and usually we say, I declare war. And when you say war, you each put, flip over the 4th card. And then what you do is you look at the 2 cards and you multiply them quickly in your head and call out the answer. So this would be 15. So whoever calls out 15 first gets to have all of the cards. So it can get a little bit, you have to teach kids to use whisper voices and things for this, but it's a lot of fun for them. That's why I said you want to pair kids together who have equal abilities, or one of them will get very frustrated because they'll never be able to get the right answer. So this is an exciting game, just really simple. One thing I like to let my students do is I like to let them play it first thing in the morning after they finish their morning work assignments. And they actually got to go over to the carpet, pick a partner, and they would play multiplication war. And you might think, wow, that's kind of chaotic. I don't know if I can handle that first thing in the morning. But what I found was that it really, some kids, they come from a home environment that's not the best environment, and they bring a lot of baggage with them to school. And when they can have 10 minutes to play a game with a friend, it just like clears their mind, and they're just ready to learn. And when they come back to their seats, like, I've never had a problem with it being like a bad way to start the day. So it was just a little way to get some extra time in. I want to share with you another activity that is in the sampler that you're going to get. And like I said, it doesn't have the word sample on it or anything. You'll be able to print this and use it. It's a game called In the Doghouse. It's another card game. Cards are lots of fun, and they're great ways to study multiplication. I'm not going to try to get you to read these directions. I just want to show you that it does have student directions. Let me just talk you through it. So within the doghouse, it's for 2 players, and they face each other just like with multiplication war. And they put a deck of cards face down in the dog pen and a pile of some kind of manipulatives, paper clips or beans or whatever, to represent the dog bones. And then they each draw out 5 cards, and I put them face down on the mat, but actually the students would pick them up and they would have them in their hands and look at them privately so that their partner could not see what they had. Then they choose 2 of their cards and they place them face down on the mat. Actually, they place them face down first. I missed that step, and then they flip them over so they can't kind of change after they see what their partner has. And then they multiply. So the one at the bottom would say 3 times 8 is 24, and the one at the top would say 4 times 5 is 20. And whoever has the higher product gets to take a dog bone from the pile. Now, if the person with the higher product messes up and does not give the math fact correctly, the other person wins the round anyway. And then the kids clear the cards off to a discard pile. They pick 2 more cards from the dog pen and add it to their selection. So you can see that it's fun. They have to know their times tables, but there's also like a little bit of strategy involved, like should I go ahead and get rid of my low cards now and know that I'm going to lose that round? Should I play my best cards? What should I do? So it's just a simple game that kids can play to give a little variation and get that fluency piece in. Another thing I want to share with you is a website called Academic Skill Builders at academicskillbuilders.com. My students love this game, and I loved it too when I found out about it. We especially liked the game Multiplication Grand Prix. Now, it is a free website. They have a custom one that you can pay for. I don't even know how much that one is, that has reporting and so on, and they have like 99-cent apps you can buy, but the thing I'm showing you right here is free. But the neat thing about this activity is kids can all be playing on different computers. Like my kids would go to the computer lab and they got to play it after they finished their other work. And they would start up a game and they would name the game a certain thing and then tell other classmates which game it was to join up. So if you can picture these little cars here being different students in the classroom, they all start at the starting line, and then what happens is the computer throws up problems there and they have to solve them. And as they solve the problems, their car moves forward. So the fastest person is going to be out in front. And it was really fun. We loved playing it on the smart board too. Sometimes we had one kid on the smart board and then another kid at a computer at the back of the room. Like at the end of the day, we're packing up to leave and we have like 3 minutes left before the bell rings, and so we do academic skill builders. So that's a fun one. Okay, so those were, step 3 was all about providing opportunities to build fluency, and there's a lot of things that you can do with your kids. The next step that's really important is setting a goal of 100% mastery, and that is to expect all students to master the math facts fluently by memory. Now, this is really hard to grasp because if you've never had all of your kids learn them, you may think it's just not possible. But I'm here to tell you that after I got this system going, the system I'm about to share with you, I had every single student every year for about 8 or 9 years, ever since I started using it, every single kid learned their times tables fluently. Now, yes, there were some special needs kids. I did have to adjust some time limits and do some things, but when you put your mind to it and you let your kids know this is the expectation, it really is possible to do this. I required all my students to master the facts up to 9 times 9, and then I told them to go on and learn up to 12 times 12 if they could. And a key point is to offer a class reward that can only be earned when everyone learns the times tables. That is really, really key. So it could be, what I used was an ice cream party. In the first webinar, a lot of teachers said they weren't able to use food rewards in the classroom, so we brainstormed some other things that they could do, like a field trip or something else. But the key is, it's got to be when everybody learns them, and no excuses. And if you say, well, everybody who learns them can be in the party or go on the trip, and if you don't learn them, you can't go, that doesn't work, because some kids, it's so hard, they feel like it's so out of reach that they're just not even going to try. So you got to set that, establish that right away. The next thing you need is some kind of method for tracking progress. I like to use scoops on a cone. They build their ice cream cones taller and taller. You could do cars on a train, eggs in a nest. Peggy suggested when we were practicing the other day, pepperonis on a pizza, I think is what she mentioned. But anything where, as they learn a certain math fact, they can add it to their cone or their pizza or whatever. You also need some kind of a timed mixed problem quiz. I used this worksheet shown here, and it is in the sample pack, and I gave 3 minutes for my 5th graders. You would adapt that accordingly for 3rd or 4th. And I always started off by quizzing the kids the first day, and if I had a student who could make 100 on it the very first day in 3 minutes, they didn't have to do all of the daily practice. They just got to go ahead and make their ice cream cone right away. Those who don't know their times tables, start from the bottom and work up. I'm going to teach you a system where you can have them do daily 1-minute quizzes using dry erase boards or quarter sheets of paper. And anyways, when they, at the very end, they had to retake that mixed practice quiz to earn their cherry on top, which meant that they knew them fluently, because sometimes kids know their 2s fluently, or their 3s, or their 4s, or their 5s, but then when you mix them all up on a piece of paper, they fall apart. So that was the final step. This is an actual photograph, snapshot from the cabinets in my classroom, showing some of the kids had mastered. You see like little blobs of whipped cream on some of them. Those were the kids that mastered all the way up to their 12s times tables. In this system, students help and support others who are not making progress by playing games and studying with them. Now, I'm quite sure that there are some of you out there that are feeling uncomfortable about this. You don't really like the fact that everybody will be able to see who hasn't mastered their times tables, and you're worried about kids that are really sensitive and things. And I think this is one thing, there's an adaptation I'm going to show you in a minute that you can try if that's a concern. My feeling in 5th grade was, I really had no business sending these kids on to middle school if they didn't know their times tables, and I pretty much point blank told them that. And we all need to work together to make sure that everybody is successful. And other teachers have told me that they were a little bit reluctant, but when they did this, they found nothing but positives in their classroom, that the kids all jumped in to help each other, and they weren't teasing. And yes, the kids that had their ice cream cones shorter than the others did feel a little bit of pressure, but you know, hey, in 5th grade, I think it's time to start feeling a little bit of pressure if you don't know your times tables and you've got a teacher and classmates to help. But if this method makes you very uncomfortable, this was something that was suggested. In fact, I think Fluency may have been the one that suggested this or something similar. You could have a giant bowl for the classroom, and then when everybody has mastered a fact, add it to the bowl. So the 1 goes in there when everybody knows their 1s. The 2 goes in there when everybody knows their 2s. That way, it's still a class goal, but you don't see who's the one holding you back from making the 3s or the 4s or the 5s or whatever. The only problem with this method is if you do have a kid that's kind of holding everybody back, it can be frustrating to the others that they're not able to see progress. So another method would be to set individual goals, and where I have the numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you could have a scoop for each student's name. And when they mastered all of their times tables, they got to add their scoop to the class bowl. And in the meantime, they could keep a worksheet like this that has a private record of their progress by coloring those scoops as they earn them. So there are a lot of variations and modifications to meet different needs. let me tell you about this daily quick quiz method that I used that was so effective, and I loved it because I did not, the students didn't have to use paper. They used dry erase boards. We did this every day. We started in 5th grade. We literally started about the 3rd or 4th day of school because they already had been introduced to their times tables and we were just reviewing. And we would just take the first few minutes of every math period to do our times table daily quick quiz. So everybody numbered their board from 1 to 9. They put their name on their board, and then they put the math fact they were working on, like if they were working on the 7s, 7 times blank equals 7 times blank equals, they listed all of them. The beauty of this system was if different kids were working on different times table numbers, like somebody could have the 3, somebody could have the 4, somebody could have the 5s, and they could all be working on their own individual times tables. Then I called out a list of random factors, so they weren't in order: 2, 7, 8, 5, 1, 9, 3, 6, 4. Obviously not that fast, but I called them out, and as soon as they'd written them in the blank, they flipped their board over. Now I made a little cheat sheet for myself that was a list of random factors that helped me so that I didn't have to keep thinking of them, and every day was like a different set of random factors. So when everybody flipped their boards back up, I started the timer for 1 minute, and they had to go straight down the list, and they were not allowed to jump around and do like the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4. They had to go straight down the list. If they did get stuck on one, they could skip it and come back, but usually anybody who did that wasn't going to finish in a minute anyways. Then they put their board face down when they were finished. When the time was up, they traded boards with a partner. Now, if you can't have students trading boards and checking each other's work, you would have to have the students stacking their dry erase boards up, and then you or an assistant or somebody would have to check it later. But you had the right here you have the person who's checking it put their name at the bottom, so there's no question about it. And then I had a chart that I just checked off whether they mastered their math facts, and then they got to add their scoop to their ice cream cone. Now there are a lot of things that you can think about doing for special needs students because if you do have students who are really struggling, it is going to frustrate them if this is really not in their reach to be able to do that daily drill in 1 minute or whatever. So you do have to be sensitive to that, but on the other hand, you don't want to set the goals too low, and you don't want to send the message that you don't think somebody's capable of doing something. So these are some ideas. So you could have individual goals instead of a class goal, like like that paper I showed you before that was 3 minutes for 5th grade. You might give another student 4 or 5 minutes to do it. You could give extra time during the daily quick quiz. Like sometimes I would just kind of tap the child's desk and say, start. I'd whisper, start. And I'd let them go ahead of time. Other kids knew I did it, but that was fine because they knew that child was struggling. Or just take the time limit off. For some kids who've had so much trouble, and I can just think about this with 3rd grade, getting those boards set up, I would help them set their boards up, and actually in the book I have something that was suggested by one of the field testers, which is a piece of paper you can laminate that actually has the board set up. I think that's free on my website on the multiplication page. I'm pretty sure it is, where you can print it out and laminate it, and the board's already set up for them. You can let them take their math fact quizzes online. There's a website called Math Fact Cafe, and I had an autistic boy a couple of years ago, and he would just go to the computer and do his quiz there, and that was fine. And if they're having trouble writing, you could have them whisper the answers to a recorder, like a person recorder is what I meant, or test them in a separate setting. And you probably have other ideas too you can put in the chat box. It's really important to get parents on board too. This is a tough step. I know we're all busy and everything, but honestly, if this is going on for weeks and a kid is not making progress, it's really time to involve the parent. Make a phone call, send home a multiplication study log, really try to convince those parents of what they can do to help their child, teach them multiplication war, send them home with in the doghouse game in a little Ziploc bag or a manila envelope for them to play at home or whatever. Just get those parents on board. And then at the very end, you're going to have 100% mastery for all, so it's a matter of when you have the party. I never told my kids, I never used words like if we have the party. I always said when we have the party. But I found with the ice cream party, it's really easy if you just say you'll bring in a large bucket of ice cream and ask them to sign up for different toppings and things, and that way you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. Maybe invite the parents or administrators or important people to share the celebration. Give them a certificate that says multiplication master. You know, really make a big deal about them being successful. If you can't do the party, you could do a field trip, maybe a special day of just centers and fun all day, you know, educational but fun. A camp out, but you're indoors. You could ask the students for their suggestions about what they you know, would like to work towards as their whole class reward. But remember, it has to be something where either the whole class learns all their times tables or everybody meets their individual goals, and then they put up their ice cream scoop in the class bowl when they've met their individual goals. So here's a quick recap on the Mastering Math Facts system. First, you got to teach for that conceptual understanding. It's not fair to make kids memorize math facts if they don't understand them. You can do that also by relating facts to real life problems. But you know, I think we can all face it. There are a lot of kids that have that conceptual understanding. They know what it is, but they have not bothered to study them. They have not developed fluency, and that is really going to hold them back in 4th and 5th grade. So it's really not enough to just say, well, they understand what 3 times 5 is. No, they need to know 3 times 5 is 15 without even having to think about it twice, or they're going to have some trouble in the future. Then make sure you have that goal of 100% accuracy. You've got to assess regularly. I did it every day, you know, 15 minutes a day. I track progress, and then celebrate when all students know the math facts fluently. One thing I also want to mention is when it comes to planning the party, I had to learn this the hard way, so I'm going to pass on this little tip to you. The first year that I did it, I don't think we even had our party till like Easter. I mean, it took forever. But what happened was around a little before Easter, I said, you know what, guys? We're going to have this party for our Easter party, and everybody is going to be on board. And there was like 3 or 4 holdouts, and I just started pulling them up to my desk, or actually went to them, you know, on the carpet, or work with them, or got kids to practice with them. There were kids practicing with them at lunch. I mean, sending notes home to, like, we just really buckled down and put the pressure on, and they learned them. And so I said, wait a minute, wonder if I could have done this back in December. So the next year, I said, you know, for our Christmas party, we're going to have our ice cream party for our multiplication facts. And sure enough, same thing happened. About a week before, there was like 3 holdouts, but everybody just really worked hard. They were drilling every day, every spare minute. They weren't doing anything fun that they didn't have to go practice those times tables, but they all got in on the party. So then I said, you know, it'd be really neat if they would learn these things by Thanksgiving. So the next year, I did it for Thanksgiving. And the year after that, it was Halloween. Now, this was 5th grade. I'm not saying you would do this in 3rd grade. But the last few years, we were able to get this by Halloween. And just think about how amazing it is to be teaching division and fractions when all of your kids are fluent. I had a tutor that would come in my room, and she told me one time, I really like working with your kids because they already know their times tables, and I don't have to waste time on that. I can work with them on the things that are really important. So I just think it's important about expectations. You might be thinking, wow, this sounds like a lot of work. I just don't know if I'm up for it. But I want you to think about, you know, what is the future going to hold for these students who don't master their math facts? And unfortunately, I think it's a pretty grim picture. I think a lot of opportunities are going to be closed to them. If you think about math and science careers, you've got to be good in math, and the first step in that is knowing those times tables. Math fact mastery is really the first key to unlocking math success. And a quick story I want to tell you about that was a student that I had, I think his name was Brandon, and he told me he was brilliant, but he had scored below proficiency on the 3rd grade or 4th grade. I think it was in 4th grade, actually, when I was teaching 4th grade. He had scored below proficient on the 3rd grade test, and I was really amazed at that. And then I realized he didn't know his times tables. He was really, really stubborn about learning them. He just didn't want to learn them. He was one of those smart kids, and he didn't think it was important. But I really buckled down on him. He had, passing was level 3, and he had a level 2 in 3rd grade. Well, when he got his end of grade test, test results back at the end of 4th grade. He saw his results, and I was thrilled because I knew he had gotten a 4, which was the highest level, and he just popped up out of his chair. I can just picture it in my mind, and he says, "Mrs. Candler, you're a genius." I said, "Brandon, why am I a genius?" And he said, "You told me those math facts were important, and I didn't believe you, but you're right." I mean, he just blew it away on the test. He had like the top score in the class. And he'd been very smart before, but all of that trying to figure out his math facts was holding him back with everything he did. So when you get discouraged and you think, I don't know if I'm up for all of this, just think about those kids. And also I want you to think about Ron Clark, if any of you have read The End of Molasses Classes, Getting Our Classes Unstuck, 101 Extraordinary Solutions for Parents and Teachers. Solution number 3 is define your expectations and then raise the bar. The more you expect, the better the results will be. And Ron Clark lives by that, and I live by that, and I really think it's so important. So be careful with your special needs students not to dumb things down too much and send out the expectations that you don't think they can do it. Even my autistic child, he knew his math facts fluently. Maybe a little bit slower, but he was still pretty good with them. Another solution is make it happen, don't give excuses, find solutions. And I just think that that is really powerful, and if the things that I shared today don't completely work for you, keep looking. There's solutions all over Pinterest and everywhere else. Keep looking for that solution. Okay, some additional resources for you. There's a multiplication resources page on my website that hopefully Francie will be dropping the link in if she hasn't done so. And if you follow me on Pinterest and you see that little orange rounded rectangle that goes straight to my multiplication freebies page, that's also where I'll be putting the webinar recording for this. And then you're going to get that multiplication facts sampler. And I just wanted to go through real quickly to tell you some things that are in it. There's a chart of Common Core connections that shows all, this is really good for 3rd grade teachers in particular for that first part of the book, because it has all of the activities that you can do to meet all of those different Common Core standards. The table of contents is like my other books in digital form. It's hyperlinked. So if you were to click on any of these links here, now I'm going to click, but it's not going to go anywhere. But if you clicked on the introduction, it would go to the introduction. If you clicked on connect, addition, and multiplication, it would jump right there. So that's kind of a neat thing that my publisher has done in the digital ones. There are the printables from each chapter that you can use. And Francie asked me to put this in as a special request. This is actually not in the sampler, so I wasn't going to share it with you, but she loves it, and so I told her I'd share it with you. But the new Mastering Math Facts book has these adorable train patterns that you can use if you can't use the ice cream system. It has the engines, it has the cars, it has the cabooses, and it has like individual worksheets and things. And that was actually based on some suggestions from the field testers. So we're about to do a drawing for the lucky winner. Now, Francie, I never really talked to you about this before, so I'm not sure if you want to do it, but at the bottom of the page of links, maybe you can take the microphone and respond here. There's like a list of the winners. I kind of did a pre-drawing, and what we did last time was we put one name in, and then we waited to see if that person said, that's me, that's
I
me.
can do it.
You want me to do it, or do you want to do it?
During the yeah. Okay,
do you have it open?
As my students would do right now, they'd be pounding on their tables, making that noise of excitement. And our first person, there you go. Yvette, are you here?
Drum roll, please. Okay. Yeah. Yvette, did you put her name Faison? So what I did is I have like a list of names, and I did a random drawing from those who registered, and we're going to wait a few minutes, and we're going to hope that Yvette is actually here. She said she was planning to attend, but we'll give her another 30 seconds. We have an Yvette Harris, Yvette,
but not.
She is.
Well, Yvette Faison, are you
yes,
Yvette Harris? Why don't you type in the box?
Wait a minute.
You have different last name. Yeah.
No, different last name. Yeah, sorry. So it's Yvette Faison, and I actually have her email address, and I would be emailing. Okay, so you had to be present to win. So Francie, why don't you give us the second name since Yvette Faison is not in the room. Here? Sorry, Yvette Harris.
Okay.
All right, Roberta Galler. Is Roberta here?
There is. Roberta, are you the same one? There's one person who signed in as Roberta, but maybe that's not our last name. Talk to us.
I don't know. We had 15. Yeah, and that's why I wanted people to sign in with their full name.
Moving on.
Okay. Let's go ahead and give the third name. Let's try. Mariette says I should pull the names after, but unfortunately, since I'm in the middle of the webinar, that's really hard to do. And we tried drawing names from the people who are in the session, and that didn't work. So we just have to be patient.
Janie Page, are you here?
Usually by about the third person.
H-I-J-K. Moving on. Well,
okay.
Laura, we have to do some more random names.
Another one.
We got Olga. Let's see if Olga's here.
There was one more. Okay, Olga's our last hope here. This doesn't usually happen that we go this far. Olga Racino.
Teresa is here, but I show that I'm away. Who's Teresa?
All right.
Okay, we'll have to find a new way.
All right. Okay. All right, so here's what we're going to do this time. We're going to try this and see if this will work. All right, so we need to clear out all the hand raising. All right. No. Clear them out. Do not raise your hand. Do not raise your hand. Clear out the hand raising. Do not raise it, please, because it's not going to go to the first person, so you don't want to be the first one. All right. I am going to write down a number right here, and when I say go, you're going to raise your hand, and whoever comes up is that number.
Okay.
All right. I have written down a number. Go. Go ahead and raise your hands, and then I'm going to keep going till I find the person that's that number.
Wow.
Uh-oh. I can't see the numbers anymore. This isn't working either. Okay, Peggy, what do I do now? Because the numbers are so big that I can't see them.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I can see the one I wrote down. All right. I wrote down number 43, and that is Sarah Kovac.
She must be here.
Sarah Kovac.
Yay, Sarah. Let's give her.
She must be here because she raised her hand. So,
congratulations.
All right, time to move on. All right. Now, I'm sorry if people leave the room and things like that, then it might be somebody else, but it was Sarah Kovac, I think is how it was spelled. All right, so there's our winner. All right, anyways, for the rest of you who are not a winner, if you are interested in the book, you can get it 20% off using a code MMFW for webinar. And if you buy the print book, you can get the digital version for free. So that's kind of a neat little perk. But if you only want the digital one, you can get that as well. And you can click through to that. If somebody, Peggy or Francie, will put the link into the Mastering Math Facts page. All right, let's talk about the certificate. Sorry, that drawing went on for so long. That really doesn't normally take that long. Okay, tomorrow you're going to get a recording for the webinar, and then these are some different places that you can connect with me: Facebook, my Corkboard Connections blog, website, Pinterest, and so on. And I'm going to move on and hope that Francie will put those links in there. And Peggy, this is your chance to do a little quick plug for Classroom 2.0 Live before we do the certificate.
I would love to do that. Classroom 2.0 Live, I know some of the people in the room have actually participated in our webinars. We hold them every Saturday at noon Eastern Time, and we take a summer break every year for the month of July. So they'll be resuming again on August 3rd, and our webinars are designed just to be helpful to teachers who want to learn to use technology in their classrooms, and we always have a special guest. We often have developers of the tools. We've had the creator of Live Binders there, and the creator of VoiceThreads and Kid Blogs, and those are the kinds of topics we have, with lots of practical suggestions for how you can use those tools in your classroom. So if you go to one of those links, you'll see the upcoming shows on the home page, and you can go in and view recordings and see Live Binders for every single show we've ever had. So I invite you to come and join us some Saturday. We'd love to have you.
Thank you. All right. Let me move on then about the attendance certificate. There's going to be a survey that pops up when you log off from Classroom 2.0 Live. Do not complete that. Just exit out of that. You've got to click on the link. I actually just put it in the chat area. The URL will come up on the next page, but you're going to click that blue download button. There's what the URL looks like, but I just put it in the chat area. And Francie, why don't you put it in there again, because it's going to disappear in a moment. Obviously, you can't click on the screen there, but it's lauracandler.com/webinars/attendance.php. Maybe you want to scribble it down on a piece of paper. And the link, like I said, it's for today only, and it has been put into the chat area. You will be able to type your name onto that certificate. It's in a PDF, but you can type your name onto the certificate and print it out. I just wanted to give a quick thank you to some of the artists whose work I used to make this presentation so lovely. I love Whimsy Clips. Her things are on Teachers Pay Teachers. The lovely lady in the middle is my daughter Wendy, who has the Digital Classroom Clip Art website, and she's on Teachers Pay Teachers. KPM Doodles has a blog. You'll have to look that up. And then Teachers Clip Art is also on Teachers Pay Teachers. You can find them there. So we are to the question and answer session. One thing I'm going to do is go back to this screen and just leave that up there so that people can see the URL. And Peggy, do you have some questions that you've been seeing pop up over and over? Because I honestly have not been able to follow the chat. And by the way, if anybody has to go, we are still recording this. Thank you so much for attending. You don't have to stay right now. I really appreciate you giving up. This actually went over. It normally doesn't go over, but we started, had a little bit of the introduction. So if you have to leave now and then you want to watch the recording, the question and answer section, sometimes you learn the very best stuff in that section. Okay. Peggy, what have you got?
Well, Laura, there were lots of questions very early on that all had to do with technical issues, and
okay.
We're not concerned about that now, but Blackboard Collaborate really wasn't behaving very well for us, especially at the beginning. So I did capture just a few questions, though, and some of them you were answering as you went along, and some other people in the chat asked and answered. So Stacy was asking about which math series people use, and that's not really a question you can answer, but many of them responded in the chat, so they'll have to get their answers from there. But Susan asked, she said that their parish is starting this school year with a multiplication and division unit. How soon can the students start playing these fluency games?
Well, I think that has to do with your grade level, because if you teach third grade and you've got to put that time into those initial lessons that build the concepts. And actually, I didn't spend a lot of time on this, but just to show what's involved in that, I want to go back to that table of contents. When I wrote the book, it turned out that almost half the book was chapter 1, all those lessons on teaching multiplication and division for understanding. So that's like really the core of third grade's going to have to spend a lot of time on that. They wouldn't need to be digging into fluency activities until the kids really had that deep understanding. But like 5th grade, they could start right away, do a few initial assessments. Let me click back over to the certificate page, they could do a few initial assessments, and then if it seems like most of the kids have the understanding, they could start right into those fluency activities. If anybody else has a different perspective, feel free to share your thoughts.
I think that's great, Laura. And if anyone wants to raise their hand and take the microphone to speak, we would just ask that you make sure you run Audio Setup Wizard before you do that. But we would love to have you do that. Also, Laura, there was a lot of interest in, as you probably might have guessed, apps for the iPad for math practice. Do you know of any resources that you could share with people, or is there anything in your sampler pack that addresses where they can find math apps?
No, I have on the multiplication page, I have some links to a few websites like Times Attack and that Academic Skill Builders, which Academic Skill Builders, they do sell their games individually, like 99 cents each. I actually went and did a search of, I wanted like flashcard apps that would kind of like, not just a game, but like sequentially or systematically check, you know, like let a kid practice on their 3s, their 4s, their 5s. And you have to really poke around. I really never found anything that I was really that excited about. So I don't know. Did people share in the chat area some of their ideas? Maybe if some of those who are still hanging in here with us for the webinar know of particular apps for like mobile devices and things.
There really are lots of them.
Is great.
Laura, there really are lots of them, but they weren't sharing them in the chat, and I think partly because everyone was really focused on what you were sharing with them about your tools and resources. But I personally know that there are a number of really outstanding live binders that have just those kinds of apps on them.
Oh, yeah, I would love to.
In live binders for iPads or math, either one of those things, you're going to come up with some great binders that will have lots of games and tools that you can use with your students. And I know that you can do that in other places too. Like you could do a search on Symbaloo, if any of you use Symbaloo, and again, search for math apps, math games, things like that, and you'll find them. So I would say just don't limit yourself to just Google searches, because those give you a million responses and some of them aren't any good. But if you go to a site that's already been curated by teachers, and that would be something like LiveBinders or like Symbaloo or like Scoop It, Pinterest, all of those things are teacher sites. So go to those sites and do your searching and you'll get a lot of apps.
Yeah, somebody was asking, Carol was asking, what are live binders? And I was just thinking I would recommend watching the last webinar. Was it the last one we did? It was the 5 Amazing Web Tools webinar. That was pretty neat, collaborative webinar. And that's on my webinar page, and I don't have my browser open to grab that link right now. But if you go back to my webinar page, it's on there. And live binders are like a way of collecting. It's just like what it says, like a live binder online. It's like very interactive, and you can collect all kinds of resources and things. So it's a pretty exciting tool. Okay. And really, also ask, will this recording be? Is the recording going to capture the question and answer session?
Yes.
We're still recording.
Terrific. Okay. All right. And really the only last question that I had, unless Francie happened to catch any others, was someone wanted you to go back to that slide for the book for Ron Clark so that they could see the name of the book again.
Oh, sure. It's a wonderful book. See if I can go back. How far I have to go back for that one. It was called The End of Molasses Classes. So he's pretty amazing. I've seen him speak 2 or 3 times. He came to the elementary ed conference 2 years ago, not this past October, but October before that. And did a fantastic, I don't think it was this past one. Now I'm getting mixed up. Maybe it was last October. Anyways, he's presented at our session. He's just an amazing presenter. If you ever get a chance to hear him, you should. He's great. Okay, so if there's any other questions, you know, put them in the chat. I think this time, Peggy, there may not be as many questions because this is the Take 2 webinar, and there was a lot of questions the first time I did it, and I actually updated the book, changed it, revised it, and really tried to address some of the problems that people had with the original program. So maybe it's a good thing that there's not so many questions this time. You know,
yeah,
I think it's a better program as a result.
To the questions from the last webinar into your presentation this time. So, unless there were other questions that I may have missed, I think we've kind of covered them, unless there's somebody still in the room who has a question that they would love to ask.
Yeah. No. I think we're about done, but I did want to say that the chat will be available later, and I think it's either a PDF or a Word document. I can't remember how we end up doing it, but if somebody wants it now because they want all these links, could you review how people save the chat so that they could go through and click on some of these links and check some of these things out, like maybe the attendance certificate?
Yes, absolutely. And you can go up under File, the word File, go down to Save, and select Chat. And it will give you a place to type in a title for that chat. So you might call it Laura Candler, that's what I'm doing, Math Facts. And then you choose the location you want to save it so that you know that you can find it again, and then you click on Save, and it will save it as a text chat for you. So that's a .txt ending on it. So then you'll have everything there. And if you want to go back and find URLs in the chat, you just do a search on the text for HTTP, and you'll find any URLs that were mentioned. Or, oh yeah, that's right, it would be HTTP. Okay, I just put, somebody was asking for where could they find my other webinar recordings, so I just put in the chat the webinar page, or if you go to my website, lauracandler.com, and you click on the workshop link, and then go down, it'll say free webinars. And so this one won't be on there till tomorrow because Peggy is going to take it and format it into an MP4 file, and that takes a little while to do that. A little while.
Thank you, thank you, Peggy, for doing that. Though, because people are enjoy being able to look at it. You know, like when I'm exercising on my iPad, I use my iPad or something when I'm on my exercise bike, and it's nice to have that ability to do that. So.
Yes,
I guess this is about the end of it then. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now. And